Ginger Carrabine, the superintendent of Bryan Public Schools, joined us. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Let's talk about that drop that came from the House when they came out with their education bills. That was last week. That kind of meant a quick study for you and administrators. How did your school district take all that information in?
Yes, sir. We're watching it every day. After studying Senate Bill 2, we anticipated something similar coming out of the House. So we read the bills in draft like everyone else and lean into our representatives to help us best interpret them. So lots of effort spent right now trying to figure out what they're telling us will happen.
Any other statewide organizations that are helping weigh in so that you can come through and find the bullet points that are important?
We do lean into a couple of them. TASB in particular, representing school boards, TASA representing administration. The media has actually done a really good job of helping us navigate it as well.
The Texas Senate version, let's talk about that. What are the things that you like and dislike about the Senate version?
Well, the Senate bill version, my concern is the $10,000 dedicated for school vouchers. We are worried that's going to splinter school finance even more than it's already happening. So that's fearful. We need to combat inflation as best we can. So we are very concerned with that amount.
And then over on the House side, how about there?
The House side is interesting as they're proposing 85% of Texas school funding. That's to be determined. So I have similar concerns, though. We're going to have to do more for Texas public schools so that we can best serve our students. As you know, in Texas, we have 5.5 million students in Texas public schools. In Bryan ISD, we have 16,000. So I'm wondering how they'll offset that. They're proposing to meet the needs of about 100,000 kids in private school. Well, we serve the masses. We have to have adequate funding to take care of our students and serve our staff as well.
Well, and that number will continue to grow. We're at $1 billion this year, but that gets up to be $5 billion as you project it out.
Agreed. I don't think it's sustainable. It's terrifying to think about public schools and what will happen if they continue to invest in the private sector for a limited number of students. It's a question that I have about sustainability for sure.
So regardless, and again, there's so much to take in, regardless of what they come up with, it'll still have to go to a conference committee and it still has to be signed. So we're a long way away from actually knowing something right there. What would you say to citizens who are watching this, your parents who are watching this go on in Austin?
I would encourage everyone to pay attention. You're right. Nothing is official right now, but now is the time to exercise their right to weigh in and to question and to give feedback to our elected officials. They need to hear from everyone about what's happening.
So likewise, on your side, this is the time for you and all public school districts to talk about this is what our product is. This is what kids look like when they come out of Bryan School District. So how are you doing that?
Yes, sir. We have a concerted effort for marketing to help everyone understand what is happening. There are great things happening in all public schools. We feel it's important to tell our story so someone else doesn't tell it for us. We're also using our voice to talk to our elected officials. Back in December, our school board of trustees and several members of my team sat down with our elected officials. We invited Paul Dyson and Trey Wharton. We had a representative from Senator Schwertner's office as well. And they met with us to talk about our legislative priorities. So we made it abundantly clear about what we need to happen in Bryan ISD in particular, but again, for all Texas public schools. In addition to that, I joined forces with the Bryan College Station Chamber of Commerce, and I went to the Capitol with them about 2 weeks ago. And we brought in the legislative priorities on behalf of the chamber, and there's a whole section dedicated to public education. And I'm proud to say that the chamber stands united in our effort to ask our legislators to make good decisions in the best interest of children right now.
In the House bill, there is a talk about restructuring the STAR system. Probably some teachers responded to that in one way or the other, but tell me what you get out of the version now as to what the standardized test will look like.
We actually welcome this. This is a good thing that they're looking at that. In fact, it's part of our legislative priorities. We asked them to consider significant reform with the state assessment system and the accountability system. And to remind everyone right now, the accountability as far as our ratings have been tied up in a court injunction for 2 consecutive years. That's why we've not released anything official. It's because the judge, it started with a lawsuit and then led to a restraining order, and it's now still in that injunction. In my opinion, the entire assessment and accountability system, the integrity is compromised. So I am glad that they're talking about reform. They need to throw it out and start over. I would hope that they're talking to school teachers and curriculum experts about an assessment that would best assess the mastery of content and curriculum in particular. I'll be the first to tell you, we must assess the children. We need to know their ability. We need to know if they've mastered curriculum because that determines our path for instruction and enrichment and remediation. So we welcome assessment, but we want it to be reformed in a way that it's not high stakes and so stressful for our kids and for our teachers. I personally believe they need to look towards multiple sources of data to determine that mastery of content.
Well, when you say multiple sources, what are some thoughts there?
Well, I think there's other instruments out there that are nationally normed. We actually use some of those instruments. I also believe in locally developed assessments. Knowing the ability level of our students, we can assess in time, if you will. We call it a formative assessment. So instead of waiting until the end of the year, we should be assessing all throughout the year so that we can make adjustments that are timely.
Ginger Carrabine, the superintendent of Bryan's schools, with us. We grew up with a grading system. There's a grading system, and that's what we as grown-ups are comfortable with. But tell me if that's a fair evaluation, campus by campus or district by district.
I'm in favor of a grading system. I think the current one, which is the A through F rating, is confusing. It's convoluted because it's not what we grew up with in school where 90 to 100 was an A. There are formulas and there are scale scores that don't make sense. In fact, the accountability manual is over 300 pages. So you have to read 300 pages to figure out the formula to tell the parents how their kids did. So I think they need to streamline that and, again, lean into the experts, talk to our teachers about what mastery of content means, and come up with a fair rating that is not misleading. In fact, in this recent school year, when they changed everything about the accountability system, the commissioner of the Texas Education Agency went on record and shared with all of us, including school board members, to expect that our kids could actually do better on the assessment, but have a lower rating. And he gave an example. For example, if you're an A-rated school or district, expect to drop to a B. So try to explain that to parents and to our kids who are working so hard and to our teachers who are pouring their hearts into it. It just doesn't make sense. It's convoluted and it's confusing. So we're asking for them to come up with a system to hold us accountable that we can explain to parents and that will make sense to our children.
Sure. Behind property tax relief, Texas teachers' salaries are important to most Texans. Texas educators earn anywhere from $44,000 to $80,000 on average, but where a teacher falls into that range depends on a lot of factors, experience, geographic location, and such. Talk to me a little bit about this district, its pay situation, retention of those teachers that you have, and what your retention rate looks like.
This is a great question, and this is the exact reason we're worried about school finance right now. We're asking for them to increase the basic allotment so that we can dedicate funding sources to compensation. And it's not just school teachers. We have 3,000 employees in Bryan ISD, and we must take care of all of them. We're all trying to combat inflation, and our school bus drivers, custodians, nurses, counselors, principals, teachers, you name it, all deserve an increase in compensation. But teachers in particular, to your point, I would say that in the Brazos Valley, we are competitive. We're probably one of the highest paying school districts. But when you look across to Houston, Dallas, Austin, which is not that far from here, we lose a lot of our teachers because they are in a higher market. We actually, in Bryan ISD, believe that this is really important, so we've hired an outside entity to do a compensation study as we speak. So we're waiting for the findings to hopefully heed their recommendations and to increase the compensation plan for school teachers, actually for all employees. Of course, I'm concerned that we're going to have this report that tells us to pay people more, but if we don't have funding sources coming in from the state, this will cause a dilemma.
Sure.
The only way we can attract and retain top talent for our classrooms is to pay them a livable wage. And I'm concerned for our future in education. I'm hearing from the universities that we don't have as many young adults going to college to become a school teacher. That's very concerning. And again, I think the only way we can combat that decline of people joining our profession is to pay them the respect that they deserve. There's a lot of rhetoric right now about bad things happening in public schools, and I'm here to tell you that there are actually great things happening. We're ready, willing, and able to serve our kids every day of the week, but we have to take care of our staff. Again, not just teachers, all staff deserve a livable wage.
What kind of retention numbers do we have in your district?
We have about 19% turnover rate, which is fairly equal to the state. We outperform what we call our comparable districts. I can tell you there's a phenomenon when you live and work in a college town. We have the luxury of Texas A&M sitting in our backyard, and we are so fortunate to have their kids come in and do their student teaching. We hire a lot of them. They stay with us for a few years, but it's not uncommon for them to return home, if you will, or their boyfriend might graduate, and then off they go back to Houston or Dallas. So I think that turnover rate is fairly common for college university towns. We're working really hard to combat that and to attract them and then keep them here with us. And I can tell you that the city of Bryan and College Station are doing a really great job with amenities and opportunities that would entice people to stay with us.
In addition to salary, working conditions has a lot to do with it as well. Let's talk about that from the standpoint of classroom, where you might have discipline problems or situations that make less than an ideal learning environment. How are you addressing that?
We are equipping our teachers as we speak, in fact, all of our staff, to best serve students. They have to consider multi-faceted layers of students and their abilities, as well as all the distractions, they have cell phones and all the electronic devices that they have. So we have invested in a multi-year training exercise with every single campus. In fact, they're in the administration building today wrapping up this year's training to best serve our kids at every level, pre-K through grade 12. Every single student is different, and they have different needs. So we're not going to change the type of kids we serve in the state of Texas. So our thought process with that is, what will the adults do differently? Things like relational capacity, de-escalation techniques, just getting to know the kids and helping them understand our expectations. I can tell you in Bryan ISD that we have high expectations for student behavior. We have consequences for them should they not meet us in the middle with our expectations, because you're right, we cannot teach and other kids cannot learn if kids are disrupting. So we have, again, invested in our staff to provide a significant amount of training to best serve all of our students.
Let's zero in on cell phones. Louisiana just did a statewide ban. I think Arkansas, Oklahoma looking at that. There are 11 states that have that. Texas is kind of a patchwork quilt. Mm-hmm. So have you investigated that in your district, and do you have any findings there?
We constantly look at that, and we're actually following to see what the legislative session is going to do, because they're talking about it as well. I would embrace tighter parameters with cell phones and restrictions. I'm here to tell you it is a distraction, not just for our students, but I think all of us as adults. It's just so readily available. Our approach has been to try to work with the kids and not against them. It is a type of tool if used appropriately. Some teachers have figured out a way to leverage that in their classroom and help the kids to understand when it's time to turn it off and to put it away. What I can tell from parents is they're conflicted. They agree that it is a distraction, but they also see it as something that would be helpful should there be some type of emergency. So I think there's going to be some things that come forth from the state so that there's some standards across all districts. I welcome that. I do welcome it, and I look forward to working with our parents to best implement it.
Ginger Carrabine, the superintendent of Bryan Schools, with us. Break down, if you would, your population, what the Bryan ISD looks like.
Okay, we have 16,000 students, about 3,000 employees serving them, 23 campuses. If you look at the demographics in Bryan ISD right now, we're about 61% Hispanic, 18% Caucasian, 17% African American, and about 78% of our students are economically disadvantaged.
Okay. I'd like to zero in addition to that, clearly many undocumented people have moved into this state. This is a border state, even though this isn't a border school district. What is the impact of undocumented students in the Bryan School District?
This is certainly a sensitive topic, and I can tell you our vision in Bryan ISD is children first, always. That means all children. There's actually a law that says if a family shows up at our doorstep, we are to enroll them, no questions asked. As long as they live here and they can prove residency, we will enroll them, and we will serve them and take care of them to the best of our ability.
But is there any there's not a matrix to be able to identify how many students you might be talking about who are not living, for instance, with birth parents or a situation like that?
As long as they can prove that they have their residency, and if it's not a parent, if it's a guardian or a power of attorney, whoever it might be, those are all acceptable methods of enrolling their students. We're ready, willing, and able to serve all kids. We are equipped. We do not see it as a burden. So again, we're doing the best we can to serve all kids and complying with the law.
So COVID money is now been spent. Can you give me an idea of what the amount of money was that BISD received and how you were able to allocate that?
We mirrored the nation, millions of dollars, and it was based and differentiated on free and reduced lunch, which is your economically disadvantaged students. Because we have a more significant amount, we probably received more than others in the Brazos Valley. It is over. They ended that, and now we were hoping and looking forward to the state standing in the gap for that. We used it like everyone else regarding the mandates for PPE when we were in the throes of shutting our school districts down. We spent a lot of money on technology. As you may recall, when the nation shut down, we had to send our kids home to fully embrace remote learning. So we had to level the playing field with technology. We also used it to again, with technology, we bought a learning management system so that we could upload our curriculum and push lessons out into the homes of our kids. And then when we opened our doors up, and we're proud to say we were one of the first to open our doors, and a significant amount of kids came back. We had to offer a hybrid model that year, but because so many kids came back, we used a lot of that money on staff for social distancing, and we even used it to attract and retain the workforce. You may recall there was a lot of fear and unknown and uncertainty. Many school teachers across the state and nation went into early retirement. So we invested in our staff as much as we could with that COVID relief money that we called ESSER to pay it to our teachers in the name of retention stipends, et cetera. So I'm proud that we spent most of that money actually on our staff and the equipment needed to serve the kids during that difficult time.
Funding for a school district is based on ADA, average daily attendance. Any number of situations can impact that. Is that still a model that you'd be in favor of?
Absolutely not. We are asking the legislators to consider funding us based on enrollment. Right now, we hover around 94% as far as attendance goes. I don't ever want there to be an expectation that kids come to school every day of the week. If they're ill, they need to stay home. If they have a family emergency, they need to stay home. By and large, we want them at school so they can, we can teach them and they can learn. But if they would fund us based on enrollment, that would be almost $7 million in our accounts to put back into teachers. We could pay our staff more and afford more instructional resources for our students. So we are asking them to please consider funding on enrollment, not on average daily attendance. And here's the irony with Senate Bill 2. They're looking at funding the private schools on enrollment and not attendance. So we just don't see that it's fair. And another point to consider is when a student is absent, we still have to pay the teacher and run the school buses and provide the food and pay the utilities. So whether the kids are at school or not, we must operate our schools. Hence the reason we need the enrollment based on, the funding based on enrollment.
We've seen dramatic changes in Washington with a new administration. They are not pleased with the education department as it exists. How does that impact you as a Texas school?
We're keeping a close eye on what's happening in Washington right now. Our concern is the threat to reduce federal funding. We do receive federal funds for students with disability. We have funding sources dedicated to career and technical education, as well as other special needs when it comes to certain populations of kids. If they reduce that, we are left with the question, will our state offset it? Because right now, everything that they're doing with the House bills and Senate bill speaks otherwise. So I'll mention CTE again. In Texas public schools, we're not just educating kids and getting them across the stage with a diploma in hand to possibly consider university or college. We're preparing them for the workforce. We take that very serious. We bear that burden to equip kids with knowledge and skills. So if they reduce the funding at the state or the federal level and it impacts our career and technical education opportunities, that will hurt us with workforce development. All the equipment that we buy right now, the robotic arms, welding machines, et cetera, I can't imagine being able to afford that without adequate funding.
The word Doge is known on all levels now. It seems to be in every state, including Texas, so there's no reason it wouldn't come down to a school district. Sooner or later, somebody's going to come before you and say, What is the school district doing to find those ways that they can use their money more efficiently?
I expect that, and honestly, we do that already. We are constantly looking for opportunities to have a leaner, more efficient operational model. We spend about 86% of our local budget right now in salaries, and I think that's appropriate. Again, it comes back down to the human element. You can buy all the books and instructional resources in the world, but if you don't have top talent working with your kids, then it's all for naught. So we invite anyone looking over our shoulder, again, to help us be more efficient. We took that very serious last year, anticipating budget cuts and deficits. So again, we're making bold decisions, but I don't want to make decisions that will hurt children. And the only way we can serve children is to support our staff. So again, it goes back to salary and compensation and all the things we need to do to take care of the workforce.
I think in your last school board meeting, you announced an agreement you made with Texas A&M having to do with being able to get some mental health support and emotional support for your students. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, that was actually a renewal. We've had this partnership before. Again, we're so appreciative of all that Texas A&M University offers for us. I appreciate that everyone recognizes that mental health is a concern for children as well as adults. So this is just another resource for us to leverage while working with parents. It's not something we would do without their consent, of course. So it's just a resource from the school system via Texas A&M University for us to share with parents to best serve kids.
Sure. Anything else we didn't cover this morning?
I just appreciate the opportunity and for you helping us to create an awareness for people to use their voice and talk to our elected officials right now. I remain optimistic that they will ultimately make decisions in the best interest of children. That's all we can ask, is to take care of our 5.5 million kids in Texas public schools across the state of Texas.
Ginger Carrabine, the superintendent of Bryan Schools. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.